Hey guys, Roxbox90 here with my M14 top 10 countdown for EDH Commander. So we're going to go through the top 10 cards from the set that I think will be cool in EDH. I will first have a disclaimer that the cards here are not going to be cards that are reprints, or at least I'm pretty sure they're not. These are going to be originals. I tried to look them all up and make sure there's no doubles, in that there's no cards from the past. These should all be brand new, and that is the lens I'm looking at it. I know there are lots of good cards that are reprints, but we're not going to look at those. We're going to look at the originals and see if they're any good. So number 10, we'll start with Burning Earth. Burning Earth is 3 and a red. Whenever it's an enchantment, whenever a player taps a non-basic land for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player. Holy cow! Anybody play EDH? Kind of ever? Well, all decks have tons of non-basic lands, except for some monocolor decks. So if you're running monocolor red, this card is going to be unreal, because you're going to play in, for example, a multiplayer environment, which EDH is great for, and your opponents are all going to have tons of non-basic fixers and lands, and every time they tap one, it's going to deal 1 damage to them, which you don't think is very much until you realize they're taking 5 to 10 every single turn. And then they're going to be freaking out. So yeah, this card is going to be freaking bomb for mono red, and it's great. Number 9, also feeling the mono red, we have Pyromancer's Gauntlet, which is 5 for an artifact. If a red instant or sorcery you control or a red planeswalker deals damage to a permanent or a player, it deals that much damage plus 2. So in EDH, where 5 mana is not as bad, you land this down and you start your burn spells, and suddenly your burn spells that would only do whatever amount, you add 2 to every of them. Being able to add 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, suddenly damage becomes crazy. And realize that red planeswalker fits right in, and many mono red decks run red planeswalkers, such as Chandra, so having them deal damage from pinging, which you wouldn't normally be as powerful, in EDH suddenly becomes more viable. And of course, red instant sorceries can't hurt to have 2 more. So I think that could very well see some play in a mono red EDH. Archangel of Thune is number 8. Archangel of Thune is not quite as good in EDH as it's going to be in Standard and possibly even Modern. It's pretty unreal. But in EDH, I still think it has some serious potential in life gain decks, particularly decks that involve tokens, because it in itself has lifelink. It's a little bit on the weaker side, but whenever you gain life, it's on each creature, which includes itself. So it's very easy to gain life in life gain built EDH decks. You gain life constantly, all the time, tons of it, which makes her not only a huge bomb and beater, but makes all your creatures suddenly that much more impressive and amazing. So I think that she has some serious potential for life gain builds in EDH, as well as token builds in EDH, which there are tons of token built decks, because she'll just constantly add counters. She is very, very solid and could definitely see some play there. Not quite as good as she's going to be, though, in constructed, in standard modern construction. Garruk, Caller of Beasts, is next. Again, he's not quite crazy amazing, but I still think in EDH he sees the most promise. At his 6 mana for 4, his +1 is not all that great, but again, you can definitely manipulate the top of your library in lots of decks. There are tons of cards that manipulate. You have Mirri's Guile, Sensei's Divining Top, Sylvan Library, the list goes on and on. You can manipulate the top of your deck, you manipulate it, then you +1 him, and you can get a bunch of creatures. So I definitely think you could set that up to get 2 or 3 creatures out of the 5, especially in creature-built decks like Mael, the Anima. -3, of course, is huge, especially because, as someone said, you could potentially run him as one of the options in a 5-color deck to drop in a card like Progenitus, or I mean, you can't really do Eldrazi, but there are lots of very powerful green creatures you could plop down for 3. And his -7, of course, is Tooth and Nail effect, which is crazy awesome in a lot of the aggro builds in EDH. So he definitely has some potential there, a lot more than I think he does currently in Standard or other formats. Ring of 3 Wishes is next. People have said to me, why would you say Ring of 3 Wishes? Here's why. Because you land it for 5, and then every turn you have increasing ambition. Now you say, well, there's only 3 wish counters on it. The thing is, in EDH, you have tons of ways of adding counters. You need to remove wish counter, you need to put a wish counter onto it. Well, there are lots of cards that add counters. or add counters of the counter type, or things like Doubling Season that it comes into play with a lot more. Being able to 5-tap tutor, I think, is definitely great because tutoring is one of the most important aspects in EDH. Being able to search what you need at a given time is huge, and even though it's a little on the expensive side in multiplayer, I think it definitely has serious potential. Ogre Battledriver is next because it's Web of War, but in creature form. Web of War is freaking crazy awesome for a number of reasons, the least of which is that it gives 2-0 in haste, so of course for Voltron, this is huge because your Voltron general gets bigger and it gains haste. And of course it does to all your creatures, so if you're landing large creatures or you're cheating into play Eldrazi and stuff, making sure they have that haste is a big deal, and while it's not quite as powerful as Web of War, because it's a creature, not an enchantment, I still think it has potential to be used in that fashion. Windreader, why is it not Windreader? Windreader Sphinx, it just sounds weird, is 7 for a 3/7 Sphinx, that whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. Realize it's not just creatures you control, it's creatures your opponents control. So of course, in many metas, Consecrated Sphinx is banned because it is such a game-warping card. This card, I think, could fill that slot because whenever it itself attacks, you draw a card. Other creatures you have flying, draw a card. If you're running this with something like in an Edric build, where you have lots of small creatures that attack, many of them have evasion, this card is going to be killer. And since card draw is so huge in EDH, I think this card is definitely a viable Consecrated Sphinx fill-in. And I definitely think it could work very, very well. And that's why it's number 4 on my list. Dark Prophecy, I've come around to this card. A lot of people were telling me, oh, you're not looking at it right. If you have a good sack outlet, it'll work. Well, guess what? You know, in EDH Commander, I agree with you. In Standard, Modern, probably not Modern. Standard, and definitely Standard, and in, I think most of the other formats, this card I don't think is that great. But I think in EDH and Commander, now that I'm realizing, if you have a sack outlet, it is pretty insane because it works in a form like Necropotence. If you have something like Gravecrawler or you have Resembling Skeletons and such, it could potentially work. It gives you a lot of flexible card draw. What is irritating about it is that it does not let you do it like Phyrexian Arena. It doesn't let you do it for life. You have to lose life. It doesn't let you do it every single turn. So, and it's 3 black, so it's not quite as powerful as Phyrexian Arena, and for 3 black Necropotence, it just kills it. But in the right build that has enough of those recurring cards, like Resembling Skeletons, Gravecrawler, and such, I think that it gives you enough card draw that for mono black builds, I think it definitely could have some potential. I'm going to try it out in my Drana deck, my mono black Drana deck, and I'll let you know what I think about it more, but I do think it has more potential than I gave it credit for. So we shall see. Savage Summoning, as I said in my full core set review, I was going to talk more about it. There's not really much more to talk about. It kills. I think this card is fantastic. I think it's really, really great in EDH, particularly for 1v1/Voltron builds, because Voltron's all about landing your commander. This card nearly guarantees you land your commander because it can't be countered. The creature card that you're casting can't be countered. The creature you're casting has flash, which basically means you can play at any time. And it lets it enter with 1/1 counter on it. You throw this card on something like Isochron Scepter, and suddenly, not only your Voltron commander, but all the best creature cards in your deck now have flash, can't be countered, the spell it's being played from can't be countered, and comes into play stronger. This is a killer card for Voltron, I think, even if you're technically having to do 2 for 1, but you're using it to play your Voltron. But for 1 more mana, guaranteeing your Voltron, or almost guaranteeing your Voltron lands stronger than ever anytime, I think it's a huge, phenomenal card. Don't overlook this if you're running Voltron and you have green in your deck. This card is sick, in my opinion. We're ending off with Encroaching Wastes. I'm not going to make the same mistake I made last time by leaving Thespian Stage out of the top 3. Encroaching Wastes, it's a wasteland effect and works in all decks. So of course in EDH, where you want to have solid land destruction, I think this card is definitely going to be very viable for 4 mana, destroying a non-basic land, such as Guy's Cradles, Cabal Coffers, on and on and on. So many cards that you just need to kill badly, and this gives you another option for it. I'm happy Wizards didn't just reprint Tech Edge, because that would be, we wouldn't have a new card to run in EDH since you can only run 1 of each. So those are my top 10 countdown. Let me know your thoughts about them below in the comment section, as well as check out my channel sponsors in the description of the video. And as always, Broxabox90 signing out. I'll see you guys next time.